Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Friday. Thank God it's Friday, the 14th of November, which makes this the news and events for Thursday, the 13th of November, 2025, day 1359 of Russia's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv, coming to you live from this major European capital currently under air raid warning. Hey, Jan, how you doing, pal? How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Steve McStevens. Hey, Bjorn, super user. Nice to see you guys. Hey, Gary. Thanks, Jan. How is everybody tonight, huh? Hi, Clive Sutton. I'm okay. I'm always okay. I'm the king of okay. Scratch that. I'm never saying that again. I don't know why I said that. Hi, Kylie Ann. How's everybody doing tonight? Are we not lagging? Good. Hey, Akron. Hey, Rob Walker. Hey, Maddie Wright. Hey, Mike. Pessimo Elemento, Sardinia is present. I don't know that anybody ever identified themselves as being from Sardinia before on here. That is awesome. I mean, you think about the Mediterranean, you think about places you want to go. Sardinia is on that list. I don't know that I will ever get there. But welcome, Sardinia. Hey, Mike now. Hey, Joe, what do you know? Hey, Scotty. Hey, Gary. People are saying no lagging tonight. That's a good thing. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Memphis. How you doing, Donald? Hey, Bernard. Hey, Refurb Man. Hey, Jan. Hey, Kid. Hey, Feisty. Hey, Alice. Hey, G2. Hey, Chrissy Locks. Well, the peeps are all here. There's Arna. Is Arna our sponsor tonight? No, Arna was our sponsor last night. Bobby was on Tuesday. I just forget who was Monday. But tonight, it is CyberDoc. So if anybody sees our buddy CyberDoc around, thank him. I haven't seen him come in yet. But he is the sponsor of tonight's live. I have no sponsor for tomorrow. I have no sponsor for any days next week. So if anybody could help the channel out and sponsor a live, the PayPal is in the description or in the bio. Hey, Darlene. Hey, Nicola. So we're under air raid right now here in Kyiv. Last night we saw 138 drones sent at the territory of Ukraine, of which 102 were shot down or taken out with electronic countermeasures. That's a 75% interception rate. Good shooting last night. There was one Iskander-M ballistic missile fired that got through. So 0% on the ballistic missiles last night. Now, the big news today, what everybody is talking about. Hey, Richard Prexis. Hey, Robbie. I don't know that I can. So the big news today, the headline that everybody is watching is about the scandal that's rocked the government here in Kyiv. Now, for me, I don't comment on internal politics most of the time. But this is too big to ignore. It's a bad situation. However, I want to point out, and I shared her video on this. Dr. K did a great video about this. And the title of it was, sometimes bad things happening are the best things that can happen. Or something to that effect, right? Here's the thing. This is a former Soviet socialist republic. Corruption is not a bug of the system, it's a feature. Nobody here has ever heard me say Ukraine is free of corruption. That's not a thing I say, because nobody who's paying attention could possibly believe that there isn't corruption here. Of course there is. Are the Ukrainians doing what they can to address it? I believe that they are. And I think that this case against people very close to the president is evidence that they are moving in the right direction, that they are doing the right things. And right now, as far as I'm concerned, nobody in the United States can look at any other country and talk about the corruption in that country when our system is being exposed as rotten to the core. So to do that, when we're, right, it's like when Jesus said, and I don't usually quote the Bible, but this is a good quote. It's like when Jesus said, how do you take the speck of sawdust out of your brother's eye when you have a great big 2x4 sticking out of your own? It can't be done. So one of the things that I absolutely believe, and I think that we're seeing it in practice with this particular investigation, is that war is a great purifier of corruption. You can't steal $100 million in energy when the people don't have electricity because of Russian strikes. Right? The most basic instinct in all of us is repulsed at that notion that these bastards leverage their position, allegedly, leverage their position in the nuclear atomic energy agency here, or company here, to steal $100 million in revenues, when so desperately the energy infrastructure in this country needs that money so that people don't freeze in their beds at night. You can't do it. The entire system rebels at that kind of avarice in the face of the greater good. And I think that that's what we are seeing here. And so the trolls will be out in force. You are going to see a lot of shit. That this proves the point that there is so much corruption in Ukraine that no one should support Ukraine. I would argue that it proves the precise opposite point. That the Ukrainians are working on prosecuting, rooting out this kind of corruption, bringing it to light, and creating more transparency. If they weren't doing those things, we wouldn't know about this, and these bastards would still be on the take. Now, thanks, Flavius. So that's really all that I have to say about that. I did share Dr. K's video on this, which I thought was, as always, well-spoken and insightful. And after the live, I would encourage you to take a look at that video if you're interested in this current scandal. And I would remind everybody, too, of what happened back over the summer when the independence of these anti-corruption organizations, institutions inside Ukraine were threatened. The people came out in the streets. The people came out in the streets and refused to let them be neutered. And that has led directly to two former business partners and close associates of the president into fleeing the country. Or fleeing, we don't really know where they are. Zelensky himself said today, when one is the president of a country at war, one can have no friends. That is to say that in time of war, as somebody said, corruption is treason. And so if my former friends and associates have committed treason, they must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Is one of them in Israel, Dino? I don't know. I don't know where they've gone, just that they've disappeared. Somebody gave him a heads up. So there is certainly corruption in this country. But again, what is this AI thing that's in here? Corruption discussion, suggest topics. Are you a real AI? Are you a person pretending to be an AI? What are you? When did that show up first? Does anybody know? I want to say it's in the last 10 days. That was Politico, Dino. Thanks. Well, user Den, you're not wrong, right? Den mentions here, in wartime conditions, Ukraine is trying to achieve. I wouldn't say Hungary, I would say the Baltic states, right? They're the ones that really are the model for post-Soviet reform. Hungary made that post-Soviet reform, and then Viktor Orban dismantled the very institutions of democracy that was supposed to preserve the Hungarian democracy, and has let it slip, slide, backslide into what we see today. Chrissy says it's unconfirmed that they're in Israel. Thanks, Chrissy. Hey, Maria. In here, Lars, you're saying it's been in here for months. Interesting. Hey, Seawolf. It's fun to stay at the YMCA. Okay, now, I have some very interesting information here. Some good data on the effects of Ukraine's oil strike campaign, refinery campaign, from September. Now, this is September data, right? Published today by the Kyiv School of Economics. They do a monthly kind of newsletter wrap-up called the Oil Tracker. And they do a deep dive into what's happening with Russia's oil production. Now, dig this. This is the data for September. Crude oil exports rose in September to 370,000 barrels a day, the highest rate seen since May of 2023. So in over 2 years, or about $200 million a month in new revenues. So income rose to $9 billion. However, because of the refinery hits, so the refineries weren't producing as much in September as was intended, there was a $400 million drop in oil product revenues to $4.4 billion. That's a total of $3.7 billion in September, or a net loss of $200 million for the month on month. In terms of the at-home refining situation, because of course Russia's currently in an export ban, they're not exporting refined oil products to anybody except for a few countries where they have pre-existing contracts. And we don't really know that all those contracts are being fulfilled. So Kazakhstan is one, Turkmenistan is one, Tajikistan is one, people like that in the former Soviet orbit. But at home, refining production for September, following Ukraine's drone strikes, which had significant effects, showed Rosneft overall down 22% of production. Novo-Umfisky shut down, that oil refinery owned by Rosneft. Ryazan down 80%. Volgograd down 58%. Saratov down 34%. And Kurishi down 16%. Those were the most affected refineries in Russia. But these are some of the biggest refineries in Russia. Kyiv is the biggest refinery in Russia, producing more diesel than virtually all other refineries combined. And that production is down 16%, which, given the following month's worth of strikes, goes a long way to explain why the price of diesel keeps rising so rapidly inside of Russia. Now, in terms of seaborne crude exports, they increased month on month in September 4.1%, like we said, up $200 million. But now, here we are in November, after Trump's sanctions were applied. Where is all of that seaborne crude right now? 380 million barrels of it are on tankers circling the Indian Ocean because no one will take them in. We saw that little spike in crude oil sales exports in September, I believe, because refinery capacity was down and they had to put it somewhere. Now it's on ships and with nowhere to go. That's going to be a problem for the Russians. Now, in September, one of the big things that these shadow fleet tankers do is they do ship-to-ship transfers at sea. They take the Russian oil, they put it on a different ship, and suddenly it's Iraqi oil or some bullshit like that, right? In September, ship-to-ship transfers, according to the Kyiv School of Economics, estimated 153 tankers of the shadow fleet were engaged in ship-to-ship transfers. 89% of the ships were in excess of 15 years old, so beyond what is recommended as the life of these ships. September, India remained the largest single buyer of Russian crude oil at an average of 1,602,000 barrels a day, over 1.5 million barrels of oil a day purchased by India alone, with Russia probably selling about 5 billion a day. It was 3.2 in September. 3.2, down from 5 million a day. 3.2 million barrels a day in September. September, Russian oil traded. Now get this. This right here is the coffin nail in the Russian economy. September, Russian oil traded at $8 above the price cap. The price cap is $47 a barrel. At $55 a barrel, Urals crude and Novorossiysk oil were trading, or we could put it another way, $15 a barrel lower than Moscow's budget had planned for. Now you think about that with me. You sell 3.2 million barrels a day of oil. You base your federal budget on $70 a barrel. You end up selling it for $55 a barrel. Now, I did not do the math on this, right? But let's think about it. $15 times, let's just call it 3 million barrels a day. That's $45 million short every day for the month of September. With a war that's costing you between $300 and $500 million a day to fight. Now, this explains why Russia is now facing a 5.7 trillion ruble deficit in the budget by the end of this year. Currently, it stands at 4.2 trillion, which is what, about $541 million, something like that, at the current rate of exchange. So the Ukrainian strike campaign continues, and it continues to have a real impact on Russian refining capabilities, Russian revenues, and the ability of the Russians to prosecute this war. It is driving a huge budget deficit for the Russians, one that has them in a hole that will not be easy to dig themselves out of. On the front lines, Ukrainian strikes that we saw overnight or the previous evening. In Donetsk, we saw an ammo dump go up. Long time, multiple hour secondary cook-off after it was struck. Special Operations Forces confirmed a hit on the petrochemical plant in southern Russia, about 500 kilometers east of Kerch. The plant is owned by Lukoil and produces critical solvents and lubricants and precursors for the oil and gas industry. Overnight last night in Tatarstan, we saw an oil refinery, a pretty big one, 8.7 million tons a year, 13th largest in Russia, 1,300 kilometers, about 850 miles from Ukraine. This refinery in Tatarstan burst into flames. Now, we don't know. It is unconfirmed. The Ukrainians have said nothing about what happened there. The fire is in the area of the distillation towers, the cracking towers. So it looks as though the fire could take the plant offline. But we don't know what happened, and we don't know who hit it, or if somebody actually hit it, or it was just a case of Ivan Smokovsky, again, doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. So TK's daddy mentions here about the cost of Russia to produce oil. There was a great article in the Moscow Times. It came out, I want to say, in October or November of 2018 or 2019. It was front page news. The Moscow Times reported, they did an investigative report into what it costs Russia to produce a barrel of oil. And it's one of the highest production costs in the world. For Urals crude, it was somewhere between $42 and $45 a barrel. Now, this oil that they are selling these days has to be, as TK's daddy pointed out, has to be put on ships. Well, that's another $12 a barrel in transportation costs. That means the break-even point for Urals crude these days is somewhere between $54 and $57 a barrel. Selling at $55 a barrel, they are barely breaking even. They are on the verge of bankruptcy. And the price of oil internationally keeps falling. This is why I say Russia is headed toward bankruptcy. It is coming with the certainty of your next heart attack. It's coming. CyberDoc is here, everybody. Everybody thanks CyberDoc. He is the sponsor of tonight's live. Thanks, brother. Oh, Zelensky's been great for this country. I mean, Zelensky's on the international stage. He is a savvy political operative. He has won the world's support. And I mean, I'm sure he's a person. I'm sure he's flawed. I'm sure he's not a saint. But one cannot deny. And not only that, he remains so committed to the troops, which is what pissed me off so much about the way that he was treated in the Oval Office over his clothes. His clothes are wartime accoutrement for a person in his position who wants to remind himself every day that the people that matter the most are the ones in the trenches. And that's what that outfit says, right? Now, look, Zelensky, while Putin, bunker grandpa, hides in the Kremlin. In the last 3 weeks, we have seen Zelensky on the front line in Vovchansk, on the front line in Pokrovsk. This guy does not hide in the shadows or hide in his bunker. He is out there. Would Trump have said that to Churchill? Trump doesn't care who he's talking to, Bernard. He doesn't respect anybody. He would have thought that Churchill was an ugly, fat little man who stunk of cigars. He would have had no respect for him at all. You can be sure about that. Well, I don't know about that, Chrissy. Those sweaters looked a little bulky to me. But I don't know. I don't know. Now, I really want to talk about this for a minute because it's maddening to me, the things that come out of these bastards' mouths. But, we had another drone incursion last night, this time in France. Reporting's a little bit unclear. There was at least one drone. There may have been two. And they were in the town of Mulhouse, let's call it. Because if you look it up, that's how you'll spell it. They were in the town of Mulhouse. And, sorry, I'm just thinking about French pronunciation and letters. It's so silly. Anyway, the cops were the first to notice them, right? The cops are outside. It's midnight. They're on a smoke break, smoking a Gauloise. What is that? And there's something in the sky, but they can't see anything because the drone has its lights off. Now, right off the bat, that's a red flag. If you're flying a drone legally, at night, the lights are on it, right? That's a condition. If you're up to some malfeasance, if you're up to some subterfuge, if you're up to something nefarious, the first thing you do is you turn out the lights. Now, I don't know about that current. I don't know how close it was to the local airport. It may well have been close. I don't believe, did they shut the airport down? I don't know if I remember reading that. What I saw was that the drone was over the police station. And then it was over a local railway station where a trainload of Leclerc tanks was going through. And so this seemed to be surveillance of a military convoy, right? That's what it seemed to be more than anything. But we don't know, right? There is an investigation. The French have opened an investigation into it. Now, with all these drone incursions across Europe, maybe, Den, I'm having trouble figuring it out. I got to tell you, I'm having a lot of trouble figuring it out. So let's think about this. Russia's whole take on these drone incursions in Europe is, we have no idea who launched drones. Why you look at us? Not our drones. We don't know. Now, this is ridiculous, right? In at least a half a dozen cases. Just last week, we saw Russian drones attacking the port of Ismail and ending up crashing in Romania, sparking forest fires in Romania, forcing Romania to scramble its jets. And that's just last week. That doesn't include Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. That doesn't include Germany, Poland, where we know they're Russian drones. And then the half a dozen other countries where we don't really know, like Belgium last week, right? And Munich, and the list goes on. The Russians are saying two things, like always. Right now, see, Enemy Rince says the Russian money is in Brussels. And you are right, pal. I couldn't figure it out. I wondered why was Brussels getting so much attention, right? Why was Belgium getting so much attention? And it was Dominic Nichols on Ukraine the Latest, the podcast, who said, that's where all the Russian money is, at Euroclear. Oh, of course it is. 184 billion in Russian state money currently at Euroclear in Belgium. So, of course, they want to try to rattle the Belgians. Listen to this. Listen to this. No one has... No, wait, let me read it properly. No... I was going to read it. I was going to do the accent and everything. No one has ever proven parts are Russian. Because mostly they're Western, right? The Russians don't actually make their own electronics. They buy them from third parties. Because there is no innovation inside of Russia anymore. That's over. In a country where you can't think freely, you don't get innovation. Dan correctly points out that the parts are mostly Chinese these days. 80% of the electronic components found in Russian missiles and drones today are Chinese. That is correct. But that leaves 20%. And you know where most of that other 20% comes from. It comes from the US, it comes from Germany, it comes from South Korea, it comes from Japan. It's a problem. It's a problem. So, on the subject of these drones, the Russians are saying two things. I mean, you have idiot bots like what's its name that was just here talking about how nobody's ever proved that these are Russian drones. Give me a fucking break. Only one country makes Gaberas, and that's Russia. Only one country makes Garans. That's Russia. So give me a break. No, you've never seen a product made in Russia, right? Not unless you eat a lot of caviar or buy a lot of mink. I'm going to get through this thought. If it kills both of us. Russia says it's not their drones. Right, MJs? But then you got Medvedev saying this. It does not matter. He wrote this on his Telegram channel. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. It does not matter who launches these drones. The main thing is that narrow-minded Europeans feel on their own skin what the danger of war is, so that they are afraid and tremble like dumb animals in a herd driven to the slaughter, he wrote on Telegram. Well, it certainly makes it clear what Dmitry Medvedev thinks of his European neighbors. They are animals to be driven to the slaughter in fear of the Russians. This is what they think of us all. Now, here's the thing, though. Dealing with reading these kinds of things from these people for the last 3 years, the way that I have been, I've come to realize one thing. Every accusation is a confession. They are desperately afraid of Ukrainian drones. They're rattled, Kurian. They're rattled. They are the ones trembling in fear. They are the ones that are afraid. They are the ones who feel like dumb animals being driven to the slaughter. And it is nothing less than they deserve. They have done this to themselves. No one should have any pity for what is about to happen inside of Russia to the Russian people. They have created this situation and fed it and fed it. And the inevitable will happen. It always does. Those of us who study history understand that the only thing we learn from history is that we don't learn anything from history. And we're about to get to watch it all play out again inside of Russia. Right, Valley Guy? You reap what you sow. That's what they say. Plant a radish, get a radish, never any doubt. That's why I like vegetables. You know what you're about. That was our interstitial musical break. Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Iceland, Latvia, Lithuania, Norway, and Sweden. So all the Nordic states and the Baltic states have got together and put together a new military package of $500 million in military equipment and ammunition from the U.S. So it certainly is nice to see the U.S. profiting on the blood of Ukrainians. It really, boy, it makes me fucking crazy. Which is why, again, nobody should be getting on their high horse too much about this current scandal in Ukraine. I just read some bullshit that Trump might have embezzled $3 billion from the American taxpayer. I don't know. I just saw a headline. I marked it to read later. But come on. Canada has passed new sanctions package on 13 individuals, 11 entities, and hundreds of Shadow Fleet vessels, bringing the total of sanctioned Shadow Fleet vessels now up to over 650. Our man in Moscow, Steve Rosenberg, who reads the Russian papers so that we don't have to, is on the job again. And he brought us some interesting economic news being covered in the Russian papers today. In Rossiyskaya Gazetia, the unmanned systems forces were created in the 4th year of the war. So you guys know Ukraine created an unmanned system forces, a drone army basically. And Russia copied the idea and created the second unmanned system forces in the world. Oh, okay, anyway. Now this is what's important, okay? For just a second, I forgot. The headline in Rossiyskaya Gazetia was Unmanned Systems Forces created in 4th year of the war. This is a government newspaper. This newspaper is owned and operated by the Kremlin. It is nothing but a Kremlin mouthpiece. Did anything in that headline hit your ear? They used the word war. Now, this is a change. This is a change for this government paper to not have called it by its proper designation, the politically correct designation of special military operation. Just printing this headline is supposed to get you 8 years in jail. The fact that they're calling it this, the 4th year of the war, could be that they're trying to start to prep the general audience for wartime conditions inside of Russia, which I believe are coming quickly, coming very, very quickly. Izvestia, the top story, is that 7,000 transport companies in Russia are on the verge of bankruptcy. 7,000 transport companies in Russia are on the verge of bankruptcy. Izvestia goes on, 1 in 4 companies have overdue loans. We talked the other day about private mortgages and private equity loans, right? These are corporate loans. 1 in 4 companies now have overdue loans. It's a record amount inside of Russia. Izvestia points to rising costs of loan servicing, high debt burdens, falling profit amid falling demand, and that this doubles the risk of bankruptcy. While the transport companies going broke means this risks price increases in transport costs across Russia. Nezavismaya Gazetia. There is no recession in Russia, but there are worrying trends. There are worrying trends, particularly the downtrends in the civil sector. DoorDash doesn't operate in Russia, do they? That would bother me if they did. I mean, it all bothers me. I haven't had a Snickers bar in years now, and I love a Snickers bar. But I can't bring myself to buy anything M&M Mars or Coca-Cola. It's a good thing they don't have Starbucks here, because I don't know if I'd be able to boycott a Starbucks. Moskovsky Komsomolsk talks about the budget deficit and how it keeps rising. The paper seems to believe that Europe is going to use the Russian frozen assets to help Ukraine. They wrote today, the next step is clear. They, the EU, will steal these assets. How elegant to fight Russia with Russia's money. Of course, the question is, why was this money in such an amount in foreign bank accounts before the SMO? Moskovsky Komsomolsk does not have the balls to call it a war. They instead asked the question, why was such an amount in foreign bank accounts before the SMO, but who to ask? Question mark. So what we see here is the kind of passive-aggressive nature of the Russian press. They can't exist the way that the Western press is supposed to in an adversarial relationship with power and just ask the questions. They have to skirt around the edges. Now, the reality is that holding assets in foreign currencies in foreign banks is a hedge against internal problems. It's a normal thing that every country does. But you can smell the whiff of conspiracy, the desire to blame and then punish someone for having made such a dreadful mistake. And unfortunately, the only person to blame, I think, the only real person to blame is Putin, who put that war chest together specifically to get him through this war. But the actual directive to put those central bank reserves into foreign asset accounts would have been Elvira over at the Russian, Nabiulina, over at the Russian Central Bank, whose favorability rating with the Kremlin goes up and down. And she is certainly shaking her head a lot these days. So could they be trying to lynch somebody over this? They might be. The Russians are big on that. So, guys, that's it. That's my top line news for the day. I want to thank, again, CyberDoc, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I do not have any sponsors for tomorrow or next week. If anybody can help out and sponsor live, this channel depends on that to stay in business. So it would be great if you could help out. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces, and of course the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Feisty, Maddie, Jay, Travis, and Pete. Thanks, guys. So questions, comments. We have about 15 minutes. Questions, comments, points of observation, or anything at all. Thanks, Mike Kelly. Could there be a civil war in Russia soon? Clive, to have a civil war, you have to have a society first. And the Russian society isn't really a cohesive society. It is rather, oh, the neighbors are making noise now. It is rather a conglomeration of conquered peoples and ethnicities who have been forced by the iron hand of the Muscovites and the Russian military to live together. And so in places like Tuva, you have 300,000 people who speak their own language. They don't speak Russian as their first language. They have their own religion that is completely unlike Christian Orthodoxy. And they had been an independent federal republic of their own, separate from Moscow for 4 years after the fall of the Soviet Union. So what we think is likely to happen, or what I think is likely to happen, is that Russia will fracture along these kinds of ethnic and economic lines. Those are, there's some pops and bangs out there. It sounds like drones. Nothing sounds big enough to have been a missile yet. I did just hear the whine of a drone for a minute there. Don't get nervous, Maddie. What are you nervous about? $6 billion was spent on Space City. What's Space City? All the nuclear power plants in Ukraine are perfectly stable inside of the country. We worry most about Zaporizhia. Don't worry about me, Maddie. I'm fine. I'm in the best protected, these things are loud. Just because you can hear them doesn't mean they're close, right? I'm in the best protected airspace in all of Ukraine. I'm less than a mile from the presidential residence. I'm less than a mile and a half from the parliament. So don't worry about me. Calibers are on the way. Elon Space City. I don't even know what that is. Oh, is that where he launches his rockets from? Trump is paying for a Patagonia Argentinian space city. Okay, I don't know why we're talking so much about Trump and not talking about Ukraine. That's the subject here. Thank you, Maddie. You're not wrong, Dan. I mean, look, most of Europe doesn't have any air defense, right? Really, not practically, theoretically maybe. But you're right. You're right, pal. We got it all. We got Iris-T's. We got Gepards. We got Maxims. We got Patriots. We got it all. I'm not a big buckwheat fan, Ren Vox. You know what I do like are udon noodles. They're a buckwheat noodle. But other than that, I'm not a fan of buckwheat. Buckwheat or sorghum. I was never a big fan of either. A lot of people speak Welsh in Patagonia. Get out of here. Why? Were they on the Falklands and then they went to the mainland? And Ukraine ingenuity, that's true. Now we got drone forces. You're right about that. I mean, I could definitely see the Welsh on in the Falklands. What film, Clive? 20 Days in Mariupol is a must-see for anybody interested in the situation here. I strongly recommend 20 Days in Mariupol. But there are a bunch of other ones. Silicon Curtain is promoting a series of documentaries that I haven't seen yet, I'm sorry to say. There's other ones too. What other movies about Ukraine has anybody seen? Good night, Chef Deb. The bridge in Crimea is still a target. And eventually it will be taken out. But they have to, I think, what they have to do first is cut the land bridge to Crimea. So get down there into Melitopol, down to Bryansk, win back Kherson, cut off the land bridge, wait for everybody in Crimea that's going to flee, and then drop the bridge. Oh, Kherson, that's another one. I meant to say that. Zelensky, just right, like you want to know about what kind of a... And look, nobody's perfect. And I'm not trying to make the guy into a saint. But we have seen him on the front line, all up and down the front line. Because I think he genuinely cares about what people are going through to try to win this war and maintain their own sovereignty in the face of this overwhelming, like just mass of Russian forces that threaten to sweep across this country. United 24 is a great place to go for news about Ukraine. I agree. Thanks, Bernard. Right, Little Red? That's a leader. Any developments with Russian rocket smart bomb? So, Smokey, I can only assume that what you're talking about are the Russian glide bombs that they have attached jets to. They've attached little jet engines to. And then either a GPS or maybe a satellite guidance kit for precision. But these glide bombs now can go 200 kilometers. And so you have a dumb bomb, something very cheap and easy to produce, that you attach some fins and wings to so it can glide long distances. Then you attach a GPS so it can glide long distances and get to a particular target, like a smart bomb. And then you put a jet engine on it so that it can go not 50 kilometers, but 200. And that's what they're working on pumping out these days. Now, what the scale of the production of those is, I don't know. Shyam Bandari, how you doing, brother? Our buddy from Nepal. Love it when Nepal is in the house. Flavius is telling me to be careful because Kyiv is under attack. Dude, can you not hear the anti-aircraft fire? I'm aware. I'm definitely aware. The neighbors are loud. Yes, they are. I'll tell you, I love Kyiv. I mean, it's a great town. Beautiful women, excellent food, great cab drivers. But boy, the neighbors are the worst. They are just the worst. Nice to see you in here, Cheyenne. This is the first time I think I've seen you in the live. So questions, guys. We got about 6 minutes left. Again, big thanks to Arna, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. No, Cyberdoc. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Cyberdoc, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. No live sponsor for tomorrow or next week. If anybody, can sponsor live, that would be a big help. Big thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server, Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps groups on the Book of Faces. And, of course, big thanks to the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk. You spent 210 Norwegian kroner yesterday on the membership. Did you, Jan? Did you just join the Patreon yesterday? I feel like you joined before that. But thank you. Akron. It happens every day. Chris, the PayPal is in the description. So, you got to have PayPal. Good night, Chrissy Locks. Good night, Chrissy. Good night, Chrissy. Nobody should confuse their Patreon membership with a live sponsorship, right? Hey, TED Talk Real Estate. Good night, Flavius. Dudes, if you're not following Ted on, I don't know where else you post. Are you posting here, Ted? Because that last home tour that I saw on Facebook was a riot, dude. Really good job. Funny stuff. Mostly TikTok. Well, then I strongly suggest everybody follow TED Talks Real Estate. It's good stuff. Thanks, Guard. We got 3 minutes left. Anybody have any questions? Thanks, Mike Kelly. See you tomorrow, Steve. All right, kids. I'm going to call it a night. So, everybody, thanks so much for hanging out. See you, Scotty. Nobody knows, B. Gould. Nobody knows. Another day closer to the barbecue. For those of you who do not know, it is my intention not to leave this country until the Russians are gone. And that means Crimea, too, because Crimea is Ukraine. And it is my intention to celebrate the victory with a pig roast on a Crimean beach, preferably one that's clean enough for us to swim in the Black Sea there. So, when the victory comes, you are all invited to Crimea. We'll get a group raid on what's left of some hotel there, or we'll find some place we can camp out. We'll get some tents, and we're going to do a pig roast. And we're going to celebrate in Crimea. You bring a budgie, Renvox. But if you're bringing budgies, they're small. We're going to need about a couple dozen of them, and we'll skewer them. Do them on skewers. All right, kids. Make it a great day. Have a pleasant tomorrow. Yeah, it's funny you say that, Dan. I was listening to Diane Francis. Do you guys know Diane Francis? She's an old White House. Ooh. Okay, that was close. That was close. That was in the neighborhood. That was close. You know how you know? You can tell because all the car alarms went off, right? At a distance, it doesn't set the car alarms off. But when it's nearby, it sets the car alarms off. So that was close. So anyway, what was I talking about? Dan is coming to the barbecue. Ooh, you hear that? You hear that? Now see, that's a jet engine. That's not the little Shaheds. That's a jet engine. Now, in all likelihood, it could be a ballistic threat. We don't usually hear the Kinzhals. They come in faster than the speed of sound, so you hear the bang first. But the Garon 2s, are jet propulsed. And I think that was a Garon. That's the jet-powered version of the Shahed that flies at about almost the speed of sound, 600 kilometers an hour, as opposed to the regular Shaheds that only go at about 150. Well, the hypersonics did, right? And the supersonics land before they're heard, yes. Thanks, Cheyenne. Yeah, we're getting pounded tonight. Kyiv is clearly the target. Clearly, Matthew Whitaker has left the town. U.S. envoy to NATO was here for a few days, and that spared us. But he has clearly left. I'm not sure they're as close as you think they are, Arn. Most days when I hear something like what we just heard, it turns out it's about 6 blocks away. It's half a kilometer away to a kilometer away. Very, very unusual for anything to come down in my neighborhood. Very unusual. Though it does happen, right? My buddy Johnny's old apartment building was hit recently. So it does happen. All right, kids. I'm going to go try to get some sleep, huh? Maybe the neighbors will give up soon. Hey, evil Royal Saxon. Thanks, Daryl Roberts. Appreciate it. All right, kids. Make it a great day. Have a pleasant tomorrow. Take care.